All right, so I wanted to make a video that cleared some things up on my thoughts on each and everything that was in the most recent balance patch that came out for Evil Dead the game. And the reason that I wanted to do this is that, number one, although I covered some things in the initial post, the initial video where I talked about the balancing changes, most of it was just me kind of like telling people what they were. And I did give some of my thoughts on it, but I didn't really go too in depth. So I wanted to make a video where I really did go in depth on how I feel about each and every change in this balancing patch. And the second reason is because I've seen a lot of like misinformation, or maybe I misspoke, or maybe somebody misunderstood, whatever the case may be. I've seen people come out and be like, well, Sledge said that he thinks all this demon stuff is bad, and all the survivor stuff, or thinks all the demon buffs are good, or all the I can't. That's why we're talking about misspeaking, folks. He thinks all the demon buffs are bad, and all the survivor nerfs are bad, and all the survivor buffs are good, and all the demon nerfs are great. Like they miss. I've seen a lot of misrepresenting of my stance on a lot of these things. I actually think for the most part this was a pretty good patch, and that brings me to the third reason, which is that after getting to play with this for a little bit and feel these changes, I now can give greater thoughts on the actual impact that some of these changes have had and how it actually feels in game. Like, for instance, I think some of the nerfs don't feel as bad as I thought they would. I think some of the buffs feel as bad as I thought they would. I think some of the buffs feel great. I think some of the nerfs feel awful. Like, I have a lot of different opinions on how each of these buffs and nerfs worked out. So here's what we're going to do. First of all, I'm going to add a little aside here where I say that initially this video was actually going to be covering the entire patch, but I got 35 minutes in and realized that this was going to be an hour-long video because I was only done with the survivor portion of the changes. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is split this up into two videos, and the first part will be covering all of the survivor stuff and my thoughts on that, and then the second part will be covering all my demon stuff, all my thoughts on the demon changes. And I'm sure that'll be fun because I'm sure I won't get a single comment about how I don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to the demon side. So we'll see what happens. But I think that my thoughts on all these things might surprise you. We're going to go down the list, and on each of these things, I'm either going to say it's a good buff, a good nerf, a bad buff, or a bad nerf. All right. So there you go. And then I'll explain my reasoning on each one of these. All right. The first thing on the list here is general survivor changes. These are nerfs across the board, by the way. Hunter stamina regeneration has been changed from 35 stamina points per second to 20 stamina points per second. So a 15-point difference, and that is a nerf. And I think that that is a good nerf. That is a good nerf because I think stamina regeneration was pretty much out of control on hunters. And what it essentially amounted to was that hunters could dodge demon attacks forever. If they were good enough and the demon didn't know how to do various like animation canceling things and stuff like that, and all they knew how to do was like a basic 4-hit combo, then hunters just flat out couldn't get hit. And I think that that was a problem. I think that there should definitely be some room for hunters to dodge attacks. And I think I'll get more into it in a second here as we get deeper into some of these hunter stamina nerfs. But I think that they found a really nice middle ground where they nerfed hunters to where they're not just out of control, but at the same time, they still have plenty of dodges to where they can avoid most attacks, because that's what they're supposed to be. They're supposed to be a class that is very fragile and high damage and needs to be able to dodge, because if they get hit at all, then they're going to go down. So overall, good nerf, in my opinion. And I'll elaborate further on that as we go down here. Revive from bleeding out state time was changed from 3 seconds to 4 seconds. I remember in the original video I misinterpreted what this was. All it is that the bleed out timer, it now takes 1 extra second to revive somebody when they go down. That's another nerf. This one I think is a bad nerf. I really don't know why this was changed, because I think even the most demon brained of demon mains didn't think this was a problem. I've never personally heard a demon main complain that reviving was too fast. I've never heard that. Reviving seemed to be in a good spot. If anything, I thought it was kind of slow. So the idea that they're nerfing this is kind of strange. Now, I want to mention something real quick, and I'll give the guy a shout out. I watch a couple of his videos on occasion. He's a fellow YouTuber by the name of Swing Point, and I saw his take on this patch, and one of his takes was that he believes this is essentially a Band-Aid patch, that this is done to fix a few things that might be out of control before they can get a greater patch out. Because like a really beefy patch needs to go through like a bunch of different checks to get out on all platforms. Whereas this is something that was more of just a hot fix where they just changed values and they don't need to put out like a big patch that has to be approved by like Microsoft, by Sony to go on the PlayStation and the Xbox. They don't need to do that for like a hot fix like this. And I think the Revive nerf here might be an example of that, because the only thing that I can really think of that would have made demon mains mad is that Henry the Red can essentially get 2 revives off with ease while he's got his ability up. And with very few exceptions, he basically can't be interrupted while he's doing that. So this makes me think that like now extending it to 4 seconds basically means that he's going to get like 1 free revive off every time he uses his ability at most. Technically, yes, he could get 2, but it takes like a second or 2 to get to the next person. And because of that, it's not likely that you're going to get 2 revives off unless 2 teammates go down literally right on top of each other. So I feel like maybe this was possibly a Band-Aid fix for that, but we'll see what happens in the upcoming patch. Regardless of why they did it, I don't think it was necessary, and I think it was a bad nerf. The stamina upgrade level 4 stamina cost reduction percentage was changed from 50% to 40%. That is a 10% nerf. That is a good nerf. Again, it's similar to the general hunter stamina regeneration that was changed earlier. This just makes it so your stamina cost reduction doesn't get out of control when you're upgrading stuff with pink F in game. It's really effective combined with some of the perk nerfs that they threw out there, because now you get a lot less dodges. And if you checked out my stamina breakdown video from yesterday prior to this video being released, you'll see just how big of a difference that made. It changed how many times you can dodge. I'll get deeper into it when we get into the skill changes further down, but it's a good nerf and very much needed for the hunter class. Boss headshot damage multiplier to Henrietta changed from 1.5 to 1.25. I'll just group all these together because it's the same for all 3 bosses, for all 3 demon classes. This is a nerf to the amount of damage. You can either look at it like a demon buff or a survivor nerf. I don't really know how you would look at it. I would look at it more as like a nerf to survivors than a buff to demons. Doesn't matter either way. I'm going to say it was a nerf, and I think it was a good nerf. Again, I don't think... I'm a big advocate for bosses being buffed, because I think demon players in general need more options. I think one of the reasons that the basic unit possession rush is so prevalent right now is because it's basically... It's not their only option, but it's very clearly their best option by far. And I think buffing bosses and making like a build that goes all in on your bosses, and these changes here is a good step towards that. I think one of the biggest concerns for demon players is that it's hard to get a boss out, and then if you get a boss out and they get locked in an animation and a hunter just two-shots them, that's obviously really frustrating. So anything that nerfs the hunter's ability to do that and makes bosses a little bit tankier, I think is a positive change. So I like that nerf. All right, so we got some character changes here. Leader Ash, his El Jefe aura range bonus got changed from 10% to 15%. This is a buff, one of the few buffs that survivors received in this patch. This is a good buff. Leaders in general, I think, were pretty weak, and so I think any buff that they receive is good. It's probably fine where it's at. 15% is pretty good. I mean, if you've seen my survivor tier list, you would know that I have him ranked in S tier now, because I think that when combined with El Jefe Grande, this and his fear resistance would make for a really crazy leader. And I've played against it as a demon, and it's if the leader Ash is good and the team sticks together, it sucks to play against. It's really, I mean, it doesn't suck. It's like, it basically makes fear as a mechanic like a non-factor, and his damage bonus now makes everybody that much stronger. Like El Jefe Grande is going to make that like a 30% damage boost. So, and that doesn't even include if you put perk points into the perk that increases the strength of your aura. So it gets really crazy. And overall, I think it is a good buff, though, because leaders seem to be lagging behind every other class. So I really like this buff. For Annie, Howitzer, the aura bonus range damage changed from 10% to 25%. 15% increase, which is kind of crazy. That's clearly a buff. Again, I think it's a good buff. Here's what I think happened here. Let me explain. I think what happened here, because it's really bizarre, her actual active ability says it's 100% increase to range damage, but it only does a 30% increase to range damage. That's what we know. Now, why is that the case, and what do we think was meant to happen there? Do we think that the ranged increase is supposed to be 100% and it's bugged to only do 30? Or do we think it's supposed to do 30 and it's written wrong to say 100%? I think it's supposed to do 30. And here's what I think happened. I think at some point in testing in the early phases of this game that Annie did do 100% range damage increase, and at some point the devs decided that's too much. That's really OP, and that they changed it to 30, and then for whatever reason just forgot to change the actual information to say that it's 30. And I think that when that happened, they didn't adjust her aura range or her aura bonus damage to compensate. So I think that she probably only gave a 10% range bonus because originally her active ability was giving 100%. And so now this is them kind of making up for that and being like, yeah, we probably should have buffed the just general aura bonus that she gives, since we significantly nerfed what her active does. And I think that's what's happening here. And I think that it's a very, very good buff. I think it's a good change. All right, now we got Lord Arthur. The Lord's Wrath melee bonus damage changed from 30% to 20%. This one is a nerf, and I think it is absolutely bizarre. I think it's a bad nerf. I have no idea why they did this. If Lord Arthur was not bugged, he would probably be the worst character in the game. Right now he's bugged so that his aura effect, which is not related to the Lord's Wrath, that gives a 30% damage increase, that also applies to ranged currently. So because of that, he's on par, if not better, than the other two leaders, depending on how you feel about what leaders should be doing. I still don't think, even with, oh boy, what a great time for a Windows update. Everybody ignore that. Um, someone's going to comment and be like, dude, that freaked me out. So I still think Leader Ash is better, even though Lord Arthur's bugged. Lord Arthur, even with his bug, I think Leader Ash is a better character. So this nerf is very strange. I don't really understand it. I think that he's probably still the weakest leader, even with his bug. He's probably still worse than Annie. So a buff to the other two that are already better than him, and then a nerf to Arthur is just strange. I don't know. I would love to hear like information on why they did this. Like what sort of data are they looking at that makes them say, yeah, Lord Arthur's a little too overtuned. I don't get it. Maybe it is the fact that he's bugged and they're seeing like, whoa, he's like buffing other teammates' damage like by a lot. And they like didn't realize that it was because he was affecting range damage. I don't know. I don't know what the situation is there, but I think it's a bad nerf either way. Next up is Warrior Ash. His shield blast, the shield damage explosion got changed from 200 to 125. That's a nerf. That is a good nerf. I think we all saw this coming. Warrior Ash was a little overtuned. And his shield blast specifically was really absurd because it did twice as much damage as what Scotty's blast, AoE blast does. Except Scotty has a 30-second cooldown and Warrior Ash doesn't. Warrior Ash can just keep doing it over and over again. And if he has full shields, he can just fire off 4 blasts in a row if he takes enough damage. And he could just keep getting it back on no cooldown if he starts spamming finishers. So it's still better than Scotty's ability. It still does 25 more damage. And I will add the little notation here. Yes, I understand to you Scotty jabroni mains out there. Yes, he can use his Q ability to interrupt being stunned. Yes, there's a bug where he can use his Q ability and it will apply the damage from his last attack on heavy. Okay. Taking away those things that are probably not supposed to be happening, it still does 25 more damage than Scotty's ability, and it has no cooldown. But I just wanted to throw that out there and get ahead of it before somebody comments and is like, wow, you don't understand. Scotty can do all these things that aren't intended, and you didn't realize it in your tier list. So I just wanted to throw that in there. But I think it's a good nerf. And I won't even get good nerf off the screen because the next one is the Wiseman's Potion, the duration being changed from 25 seconds to 20 seconds, the cooldown being changed from 60 to 80, and damage reduction changed from 50% to 30%. This is a nerf, and it's a good one, just like Shield Blast. Wiseman's Potion was just out of control. It lasted forever. The cooldown was fairly short, and the damage reduction was pretty ridiculous. And to tell you the truth, apart from the cooldown, I think 80 seconds is a good spot. This thing could probably get nerfed again, to be honest with you. Like, I still have played with AOD Ash since this patch, and he still feels really, really good. But yeah, this is a long time coming. He obviously needed to be nerfed. Maybe he's fine now, but just based on how I've played with him, this ability still feels pretty crazy. I don't think it needs to have a longer cooldown, and I think longer cooldowns in general just kind of suck because I think anytime you have a really cool, fun, unique ability and make it so you can only use it every like 2 minutes, just stinks. So I wouldn't want to increase the cooldown, but if they needed to nerf this a little more and give even less of a damage reduction or something, I wouldn't like be freaking out about it. But this was definitely a good nerf. Hunter Ash, Exorcist, cooldown change from 60 to 90, infernal reduction percentage change from 15% to 20%. So basically that means like if you use it on an elite or boss unit, it's going to reduce more. It's going to take away more infernal energy now, 5% more. So it's kind of a pseudo, it's partly a nerf and also partly a buff, but ultimately I classify it as a nerf, and I think it's a bad nerf, and I will explain why. This is probably one of those takes that's going to get demon mains riled up, but let me explain. Do I think that this ability probably does need to be nerfed? Yes. Do I think it needs to be nerfed right now with the way the meta has kind of shaken out? No. I think that it's one of the few ways to combat the basic unit possession rush, especially as a solo queue player, and nerfing it right now without changing basic unit possessing and in fact buffing it a little bit, I think is not a good idea. If they had come out with a bigger patch later where they made some changes to basic possession units, possessing them, I mean, and they came out with this nerf, then I'd be like, okay, that's great. And then you look at the infernal reduction percentage being changed from 15% to 20%. It's only a 5% difference, which number one is super insignificant just by itself. But number two, you should never be using Hunter Ash's ability on an elite or a boss. You should always be using it on a basic possessed unit or a teammate who's possessed. You should never be using it on elites or bosses. And really, you should be using it on a possessed basic like 99% of the time. As a hunter, you deal so much damage that it's kind of expected for you to shoot your teammate. If they get possessed, you should probably be shooting them, and that's a more effective way to knock them out of possession and also save your exorcism for a basic unit. So the idea of like increasing it only by 5% and it was a useless part of his ability anyway is just really weird and silly. So I don't like it. It's a bad nerf. Ed Getley, it's a trap cooldown change from 60 seconds to 90 seconds. That's a nerf, and I think it is a good nerf. It's a trap was arguably the best ability in the game. And so it probably did need to be tuned down a little bit. Truthfully, I'm not sure if I would have changed the cooldown like that. I probably would have just lowered how long it's active for, because it's active for a ridiculously long amount of time. But that's okay. Like, I think it needed a nerf one way or another, and I'm fine with this. 30 extra seconds is a significant nerf, but I think he needed a nerf, so I'll say it's a good one. Yeah, it's one of the better abilities in the game. And here's the other thing I wanted to mention about it. I think that I truly believe that basic possessions, a nerf is coming in a bigger patch. I think it is coming. And I think that this nerf is a kind of, I don't know what the word for it is. Like this is in preparation of that upcoming nerf. Because if you nerf basic possessions, then trapping is going to become that much more important in the early game for demons. And they may make a number of changes. They may leave like possessing basic units in the game, but just make them a lot less powerful and just make it so that they generate a lot more levels and XP for the demon and stuff like that. I don't know what the devs are going to do, but I do think that they are going to nerf basic units, basic possessed units in some form or fashion. And because of that, Ed needs to be nerfed. His ability does. It's a trap, because if he just in the early game disables all the demon's traps, that's going to significantly hinder the demon's ability to harass the survivors in the early game and build levels. So it did need to be nerfed, especially under the idea that demon possession rush is going to be changed later. So I think it's a good nerf. The Collector, increase the probability to find higher rarity loot boxes on Ed Getley. That's his level 25 ability. That is a buff. Now, I'm going to say it's a good buff, but I want to make a note here. His original Collector ability clearly didn't do enough. I think we could all see that. However, it kind of seems like it's overtuned now. It did need to be buffed. I don't know that it needed to be buffed as much as it has been buffed. Because now it seems like I'm finding purple and legendary chests all over the map. And now it feels like it even buffed the portion of that ability that makes it so units will drop loot. They'll drop ammo, they'll drop shemps, they'll drop amulets. It seems like it increased the chance for that to happen as well, which, as you can see here, this doesn't say anything about increasing that. So that's really strange. It's almost like it buffed it across the board, including the part that it didn't say was going to be buffed. So yeah, it needed to be buffed. I don't know that it needed to be buffed this much. It might need another nerf, because one thing that I really want to note is on my Survivor tier list, I didn't get a chance to play with Ed yet. I had played alongside a few Eds. I put him in A tier because I was like, it's going to take a while before we understand just how good this buff to his collector perk is. If I could go back and do that video again, he'd be S tier, easy, because that's how good the collector buff is right now. In fact, I'd say he's arguably better than Kelly right now. And that's factoring in the fact that Kelly is bugged. That's how good Ed Getley is at the moment with this new buff. Speaking of Kelly, let's talk about the next little change here. Battle Frenzy, the buff X stack changed from 2% to 1%. This is a nerf. Now, this one might upset people, but again, please let me explain before you go nuts. I think it's a bad nerf, and the reason why is I think that Battle Frenzy, if it only affects her melee, is just fine the way that it was. Is perfectly fine the way that it was. Didn't need to be nerfed at all. It just needs to be fixed to not also apply to her ranged. Now, again, as Swing Point said, this might be a band-aid fix. It's possible they're just doing this for now until they can roll out a bigger patch where they fix that bug and make it so that her Battle Frenzy does not apply to the amount of range damage she does, and then they'll revert it. But my concern is they're not going to revert it. And then her Battle Frenzy becomes really, really bad. Because I think a perk that only increases melee damage on a hunter is not very good anyway. So the idea that they nerfed something that wasn't very good to begin with, assuming it didn't apply to a range damage, is really bad. So hopefully they revert this change once that Kelly bug gets fixed, because that Kelly bug is nasty. So overall, it's tough to say if it's a bad nerf or a good nerf. I guess it's a bad nerf in the sense that if you take out the context that her ability is bugged, it's a bad nerf, because Battle Frenzy is not that great anyway without the bug. It's a good nerf in the context of, okay, well, we need to do something right now about the fact that she is bugged. So I'm kind of in between there. So I guess it's bad nerf, good nerf, depending on what you think, depending on your thought process. You can go either way. Cheryl, last one for Survivor changes here. Her healing area when drinking Shemps changed from 6 meters to 5 meters. That's a nerf. I think that's, again, a bad nerf. Everyone thought that Pablo and Evil Dead 1 Ash, support Ash, were bugged to where they were not getting the same range that they should be getting that's equal to Cheryl. And it turns out they're saying Cheryl is getting too much and needs to be nerfed. Evidently what's happening here is that as Cheryl levels up, she has a bug where her healing range gets bigger and bigger until it gets like really out of control. I don't know what the max range is, but it's something like 12 meters or something. I don't know why that bug exists. It's really weird. But to tell you the truth, I feel like whatever Cheryl's healing range is at, whether it's bugged or not, feels like the right range. And I think all the supports should have that kind of range. The fact that they're like nerfing her and kind of admitting like, well, the range she has is not what it's supposed to be, really stinks, because support Ash and Pablo's range feels really, really bad. Like, you have to be hip to hip with people. And I don't like it. I don't like the way it feels. Cheryl feels like she's great where she's at as far as her range, and that the other two need to be buffed to be where Cheryl's at, not Cheryl nerf to be where the other two are at. So I really didn't like this nerf at all. Next up, we got skills. First, we got Last Chance. Level 1 changed from 10% to 5%. Level 2 changed from 15 to 10. Level 3 changed from 20 to 15. Level 4 changed from 30 to 20. So this is the perk that makes it so the last bullet in your gun does extra damage. This is just a nerf across the board. And as you can see, the most significant nerf is to level 4. It's a 10% difference as opposed to a 5% difference on the other 3 levels. Clearly a nerf, and I think it's a good nerf. Hunter damage was pretty out of control, as we talked about. And I think anything that kind of nerfs their damage while still kind of keeping them pretty strong, I think is a good thing, because we need to kind of take away their ability to basically 2-shot, 3-shot bosses, because bosses need to be beefed up, in my opinion. So I think anything that nerfs hunter damage, because I think hunter damage and hunter stamina, both of those things were kind of out of control. So I think this is a pretty good nerf. In that same vein, deadly up close, level 2 damage nerf from 15 to 10. Level 3 change from 25 to 20. Same sort of thing. This is the perk that makes it so you do extra damage when you are within 5 meters or yards or whatever it is from your target. If you're within that amount of space, then you do the extra damage. Again, this one's not even that significant. It's only a 5% nerf at level 3, so good nerf. I like it. Not much more to say that I didn't already say on Last Chance. But staying power is the last one. And again, I won't even change good nerf off the screen, because again, I think it's a good nerf. Staying power is a perk unique to hunters, and it increases their overall stamina, and level 3 has been changed from 25% to 15%. Now, this is where I want to dive a little bit deeper, elaborate a little further on why I think hunters needed to be changed and why I think that they are in a good spot now. Before, hunters could get 7 dodges at maximum. Now, if you want to dive even deeper into this, you can look at my stamina breakdown video that I had posted the day before this video will come out. They could essentially just dodge forever. They could get a maximum of 7 dodges if they had staying power and the other stamina reduction perk fully maxed out. They could get 7 total dodges. And that's kind of out of control, because it basically gives them the ability to dodge a ton, and then their stamina regeneration is super fast, so they can dodge a bunch, regain all that stamina, and then dodge some more. And what that effectively meant is that hunters could basically never be hit if they were good enough. So now the nerf has changed it to where the most dodges you can get if you max out all perks is 5. And I think that that's a good thing. One other thing to note is that you actually only need to put 1 point into staying power and give it 5%, and you still get 5 dodges. That's probably not a good thing. That's probably something that needs to be looked at. I don't know what they do there. Like, that basically makes it worthless to put 2 extra points into staying power, which begs the question, why even have that as an option? But I guess there might be people out there who want that extra 10% stamina so that they can sprint for longer. So I guess you can leave it in. But it doesn't make a difference in the number of dodges you have. And I think that 5 dodges is a good spot to be in, because it still allows hunters to dodge a full combo, which they should be able to do, because that's kind of their thing. But at the same time, their nerf to stamina regeneration makes it so that they can't gain enough stamina back in time to where they can just dodge forever. So like if they dodge, and dodge a full combo, they're not going to be able to regen enough stamina in time for before the demon is able to start up a new combo, which means eventually, if you're the last one left, the demon is going to catch you. They're going to hit you eventually. And you can't just dodge forever. So I think that that's a good thing. And also, because they nerfed the amount of dodges you have, there's less room for error. Before, if you had 7 dodges, it was like, well, geez, you can mess up 3 times and still have 4 dodges left over. And still have enough dodges to dodge an entire combo. So I think that's a good thing. It makes it a more skillful play. Like, now, if you're not that good at dodging and you mistime your dodge and get caught, you're going to get punished a lot harder for it. But at the same time, if you are a good player and you can time your dodges well every single time, then you're not going to get hit until you're like the last one left. So I think it makes Hunter still difficult to hit, which they need to be because they're supposed to be a glass cannon, but it makes it so that you can't just dodge forever, and that some Johnny Jabroni can't just dodge every single attack because all they need to do is spam spacebar. So I think overall, all these Hunter stamina nerfs are great. I think they're really good, and I think Hunters now are in a really good spot. As far as like general changes, obviously someone like Kelly needs to be nerfed or changed. Her bug needs to be fixed. I'm just talking about like in general, their stamina is in a good spot. All right, so that's going to do it for me. We're actually going to get into the Kandarian demon changes next in the next video and talk about whether I think it's a good buff, good nerf, bad nerf. Originally, I was going to make this all one video, but I'm 35 minutes into the video and I'm just now getting into the demon stuff. So I'm like, maybe I should probably split this up into 2 videos because I don't want this video to wind up being an hour long, because who wants to sit through a full hour of going over balance changes? So we'll just keep it with survivor stuff only, and then the next video will cover the demons. Let me know in the comments what you think, if you agree, disagree on my takes on whether or not these buffs and nerfs are good or bad. And as always, if you made it this far in the video, subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. And I hope that we could get some good discussion going. And as always, thank you for watching.